Translator, Dark Angel. Editor, Kurisu Yan. Tianzhao pressed his palm to the bridge of his nose and muttered, "So it no longer concerns me?" He shook his head, saying, "Forget it. Rain Country is but one station on my journey. Once I have obtained the mystical power, I shall go and see a more bustling place in the northern region. The overall martial standard here is truly too low, and there are only these few so-called geniuses. This is of no benefit to my growth." He clasped his hands behind his back and strode toward the hill's peak. "Niu built this road, and no one is allowed to pass." Hu Niu instantly flung out her arms, her stance plainly meant to bar his path. "Little girl, you are a bit peculiar, but you are still not strong enough to oppose me. Step aside. I do not wish to hurt you," Yan Tianzhao said evenly. It was unknown whether compassion had stirred within him or whether he was wary of Hu Niu's strangeness. "Hang, aside from Ling Han, no one is allowed to pass." Hu Niu bared her teeth, and instead of retreating, took the initiative to strike. Shoo, she moved like a gale. Even quite a few spiritual ocean tier elites could barely catch her motions. In a flicker, the little girl had already appeared behind Yan Tianzhao. She raised her tiny hands high and shua, 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 unleashed a series of ferocious claw strikes. Tang, tang, tang. Yan Tianzhao abruptly staggered forward several steps from the impact, and multiple bloodstains appeared across his back, displaying the terrifying destructive might contained within Hu Niu's hands. Once again, another first-layer gushing spring tier cultivator, and once more, one capable of injuring a spiritual ocean tier opponent. Those standing at the foot of the hill felt as if they were trapped within a dream. It was far too unreal. Since when had the gushing spring tier become so formidable? And moreover, it was only the first layer of gushing spring tier. Previously, they had all thought Hu Niu existed solely to act cute, yet who would have expected that the tournament had only just begun, and this little girl would deliver such a shocking blow, exploding forth with astonishing speed. However, speed was speed. But what now? A first-layer gushing spring tier cultivator could actually tear through the defenses of the spiritual ocean tier. This destructive power was practically terrifying. They again turned to look at Feng Yan. According to hearsay, the wild strength berserk ape's destructive power was frightful, yet an attack on Ling Han had only managed to draw a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. But Hu Niu was capable of turning Yan Tianzhao's back into a mangled mass of flesh and blood. With such a comparison, it was plainly more accurate to say that Hu Niu was the true owner of the wild strength berserk ape bloodline. On one side, it was a spiritual ocean tier martial artist striking at a gushing spring tier opponent. On the other, it was a gushing spring tier martial artist striking at a spiritual ocean tier opponent. Yet it was Hu Niu whose destructive power was stronger. Could it be any clearer? Shoo, Hu Niu launched another attack. Speed was her greatest advantage, her figure drifting like the wind. When one's eyes finally seized her shadow, in truth, the little girl had already appeared somewhere else. What the eyes caught was merely an afterimage. Hu Niu had not the slightest mercy within her. Slaughter was her instinct, and once that instinct had been roused, it was as if she had become a little beast girl, endlessly pouncing upon Yan Tianzhao in attack. On his arms and legs, Yan Tianzhao's blood continued to flow without end. Even with his spiritual ocean tier cultivation, it was useless. He simply could not lock onto Hu Niu's position, so there was absolutely no use to his superior realm. Everyone was dumbstruck. In their thinking, speed could only be used to flee, yet what unfolded before their very eyes overturned every notion they had. Only because their speed had never reached an extreme. Whoever possessed speed like Hu Niu's could wholly turn it into the greatest source of battle prowess. Yan Tianzhao's expression darkened more and more. Yet at the corners of his lips, an incomparably sinister smile still curled upward. Hong. He actually spewed a green fog over his entire body. It transformed into countless threads that intertwined tightly, turning the space within 30 feet of him into a spiderweb-like domain. It was not a net laid flat upon the ground, but a net standing upright. Hu Niu instantly collided into the green web. She struggled, yet discovered that though those green threads were extremely thin, they were shockingly tough. No matter how she exerted herself, she could not break free. Hang, within my heaven and earth spider web, you still dream of escaping? Yan Tianzhao sneered coldly. The threads stirred, as if they possessed life and will of their own, drawing Hunyu closer and closer toward Yantianjiao. Hunyu grew anxious, turned her head, opened her mouth and bit. Woola! And a green thread was actually torn in half by her bite. Yantianjiao was so stunned, his eyes nearly bulged out. This was heaven and earth spiderweb, his absolute trump card. As long as someone of the same cultivation level as him was caught by this web, it was impossible for them to break free. Its sturdiness was comparable to same-tier ingredients used in forging weapons. Yet this little girl had actually ripped it apart with a bite. What kind of teeth did she have? When he recalled how he had suffered so many claw strikes at Hunyu's hands, then if the little girl happened to choose to bite him instead, Yantianjiao could not help swallowing hard and lifting a hand to rub at his throat. Then it truly was possible she could tear through his throat in a single bite, and he would die on the spot. A powerful, lingering fear rose within him, and the killing intent in his eyes surged explosively. He sent a palm strike toward Hunyu's chest. Heng! The Rain Emperor gave a light snort, and his imperial authority spread out, vast and mighty. Yantianjiao instantly felt pain bloom in his chest, his mind trembling. He hastily withdrew a portion of his strength and, with a ping, Hunyu was flung away by the strike. With a pa, she crashed down at the foot of the hill, her tiny body lying motionless upon the ground. She had only suffered a heavy injury because that snort from the Rain Emperor made Yantianjiao withdraw a great portion of his power. The Rain Emperor had already declared this a tournament and a spar, so injuries were unavoidable. However, killing was absolutely forbidden. Before the Rain Emperor, who would dare commit murder? Ling Han was presently locked in a fierce battle with Feng Yan, and upon seeing this scene, he could not help but erupt into towering rage. Get lost! He swept out a violent slash, within it an endless inferno of fury. Feng Yan actually did not dare receive it head-on, and could not help but retreat strategically. With a sweep of his divine sense, Ling Han knew Hunyu was not in life-threatening danger. He also knew that with the Rain Emperor present, it was impossible for anyone to lose their life. Yet when he saw Hunyu's tiny figure, sprawled there without the slightest movement, with a trace of blood at the corner of her lips, he was still furious beyond measure, and felt an urge to shatter every inch of heaven and earth. Hunyu had been injured because she had tried to stop Yantianjiao, and the reason she had done so was naturally because of him. Since his rebirth, this was the second time he had been so enraged. The first time was when Ling Dongxing was captured by the Chen clan and was about to be beheaded in public. Yantianjiao! He roared, throwing off Feng Yan and charging straight toward Yantianjiao. Yantianjiao was likewise extremely displeased. He, a genuine spiritual ocean-tier elite, had actually been beaten black and blue by a little girl. Now, he had only knocked Hunyu unconscious and injured her slightly. So what was there for Ling Han to be so furious about? Feng Yan was even more enraged and howled in fury because Ling Han had actually shrugged him off and ignored him. Moreover, this was the first time he had seen Ling Han so furious. Even when Liu Yutong had been forced to marry another, Ling Han had not been so angered. This clearly meant that Ling Han had only been toying with him before and had never taken him seriously as an opponent at all. Damn it! Damn it! He was truly too despicable. Ling Han seethed. Liu Yutong was merely his little female attendant, but he regarded Hunyu as family. Moreover, Hunyu was only such a little girl, so Ling Han naturally doted on her all the more. Even he himself did not dare scold her too harshly, yet now she had been struck so heavily by Yantianjiao that she lay unmoving upon the ground. How could this not make him furious beyond all restraint? Ah! He drew his sword in blazing rage, and in that instant he forgot everything else. The only thought in his mind was to behead Yantianjiao. Shua. 7 flashes of sword chi burst into radiance. Editor, Kurisu. Beneath that boundless wrath, Ling Han at last shattered the bottleneck. His 7th wisp of sword chi took form. Tang! Everyone at the foot of the mountain sprang to their feet. Whether saber chi or sword chi, so long as one could give birth to chi, one possessed the qualifications to become a king. Yet up to 3 wisps was but a minor achievement. 6 wisps counted as a major achievement, and 7 wisps could truly be crowned king. If one looked back through Rain Country's history, those who had possessed 6 wisps of chi were not few, though all of them had been 60 or 70 before reaching such a realm. At the very least, geniuses of that sort still existed. But 7 wisps? One and only. Across the whole 9 nations of the desolate north, 700 years ago, a peerless blade genius had indeed appeared, materializing 7 wisps of sword chi, invincible at the spiritual pedestal tier, fully worthy of the kingly state. Yet when that sect master of the blade formed 7 wisps of sword chi, he or she had already been 62 years of age, and this youth before their eyes. How old was he? A freak. The freaks of this age were emerging without end. That 7th wisp of sword chi was not the entirety of Ling Han's breakthrough. In the midst of his violent fury, Ling Han unsheathed Mysterious 3000. This was ordinarily his mightiest sword art. Yet what was not ordinary was that, under that raging violence, every wisp of sword chi underwent a transformation. Mysterious 3000 could, at the limit, unleash 3000 strikes in an instant. This was absolutely an ultimate move, and at the highest tier it could nearly overturn the world. However, Ling Han was far from such a tier, thus he could only unleash 100 strikes. Now, 800 sword lights appeared. Could his comprehension of Mysterious 3000 have advanced so far beneath his rage? The oddity was that he still released 100 sword lights. That was because the 7 wisps of sword chi split. 1 became 2, 2 became 3. Each wisp of sword chi turning into 100 sword lights. 800 sword lights blazed through heaven and earth. What sort of concept was this? It was akin to 800 Ling hands attacking, each one casting out a strike. Though this strike was a common one, without the use of any technique, it was still a full-strength blow. 800 combined could frighten a person to death. Behind him, Feng Yan halted abruptly. This radiant, resplendent assault frightened even him, making him unwilling to meet it head-on. To do so would truly be walking into disaster. Yan Qianzhao's expression changed sharply. He hastily roared, and waves of green mist spewed forth, condensing into a barrier that sealed off the space between him and Ling Han. 800 sword lights struck. Pang! The green barrier instantly shattered into countless fragments, and the sword light continued on its course, hurling Yan Tianzhao through the air in a parabolic arc before he crashed heavily to the ground. He was still alive, yet his whole body was drenched in blood. His flesh was torn open so badly that bones were exposed, and the organs within his chest cavity could be seen. The astonishing thing was that the muscles across his entire body were writhing, healing at an astonishing speed. Ling Han was stunned. This still could not kill him? No wonder the Rain Emperor had not intervened. Pa, he dropped to the ground. Those 800 sword lights had been shockingly fierce, yet the expenditure was likewise terrifying, draining his origin power clean. This was only 800 sword lights, not even the limit of 3,000. No wonder he could not activate the 2nd and 3rd forms of the 3 styles of Black Origin. He did not even have the origin power. The people of Heaven's Sword Sect were all abnormal? Ling Han panted heavily. Hu Niu lay in a coma. Yan Tianzhao lay in a coma. Only Feng Yan's battle prowess remained intact. Ha ha! Feng Yan threw back his head and laughed, striding over in great steps. Who would have thought I'd win in this way? He had already suppressed his wild strength berserk ape bloodline, which was greatly exhausting, so he naturally also suppressed his mirror light body. Now the other 3 had already lost their battle prowess. Even if his cultivation were weakened 100-fold, he would still win. Ling Han smiled bitterly. In the blaze of rage he had not thought much, nor had he known he could gain a breakthrough in the application of Mysterious 3000, releasing 800 sword lights in one burst, and draining his origin power completely. Medicinal pills could not be taken during the match. Taking a pill meant forfeiting. So what should he do? Watch helplessly as Feng Yan reached the summit? You truly disappoint me. I had intended to defeat you when you unleashed your full battle prowess, then cripple your 2 legs, striking you from the pinnacle of your life down to the lowest abyss. Feng Yan said, his tone full of disappointment. Ling Han laughed aloud, speaking with disdain. That sword strike just now, would you dare to parry it? Feng Yan's expression stiffened. Even with 2 physiques won, both of them formidable, He had still been frightened by those radiant, extreme 800 sword lights. He supposed they could be blocked, but he would end up the same as Yan Qianzhao, gravely injured. "Humph, the result now is that you can only look up at me." He did not answer the question, for such suppositions held no meaning. A chill flashed in Feng Yan's eyes as he lifted his foot, ready to trample Ling Han. He would make Ling Han lose face before all under heaven. Ling Han raised a hand to block, yet everyone could see how futile it was. Was a quasi-earth-grade alchemy master who had formed 7 wisps of sword chi truly about to suffer such humiliating disgrace? Those below felt a sour discomfort in their hearts. Liu Yutong and Li Xichang were even more agitated, for they could not forfeit on Ling Han's behalf. Feng Yan sneered, stomping down without hesitation. Pa! His left foot came down upon Ling Han's right hand, and a force like a towering mountain pressed upon it, grinding down toward Ling Han's face. Yet at that instant, Feng Yan's complexion changed violently as he loosed a miserable scream that shook heaven and earth. Why in the world was he screaming? He clearly held the overwhelming advantage, yet he still wanted to deceive people? No. Everyone saw clearly. Feng Yan's left leg was being corroded, as though it were formed of mist, dispersing in wisps from a single puff. What was happening? A proud smile rose on Ling Han's face. He had refined the Asura Demon Emperor's demonic chi, and thereafter formed a black demonic seal upon his palm. This was the power of regulation, terrifying beyond measure. Though the power was fierce, it could only cling to the surface of the palm, and thus, ordinarily, had almost no use. Yet Feng Yan had actually stepped on him, seeking pain for himself. Ah! Feng Yan shrieked sharply and severed his own left leg. Otherwise, the corrosion would continue to spread until his entire person was turned to dust. Pa, he abruptly sat down. The issue was not merely a leg, but also a terrifying surge of power that had penetrated into his body, churning and leaving him incomparably unwell. Merely suppressing the urge to scream was already exceedingly difficult, let alone fighting. Now, of the 4, none still stood. Who would have thought the scene would unfold in such a manner? Everyone stared blankly, utterly unable to accept what had happened. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Those who had originally been knocked down the mountain came rushing back one after another. The formidable ones were injured, and those unconscious remained unconscious. Was this not precisely their chance? Ling Han rose to his feet. He was not injured, merely drained of origin power. Now, naturally, he had recovered a bit and could stand and run without any problem at all. He took great strides, and in an instant he was before the Rain Emperor. The victor of this battle is Ling Han. The Rain Emperor's imposing voice rang out, shaking the skies.